For more resources, visit rymonline.org.
The Local Youth Worker is a daily podcast that's centered on 5 questions each week. Ranging from the practical to the professional, we're looking for answers to the questions you're asking. Whether you're in full-time, part-time, or even volunteer youth ministry, this podcast is for you.
Hello everyone, this is John Parrott, and you're listening to The Local Youth Worker, a daily podcast presented by Reformed Youth Ministries. Today I'm here with Joe Deegan, who was the former, was it youth director, Joe?
I was youth director for a couple years and youth coordinator for a few years before that.
Okay, at Christ the King.
Christ the King in Houston.
In Houston, Texas. All right. And so, our basic format is asking 5 questions of youth workers throughout the week, and we break those up in daily segments, and we ask some basic questions of youth workers, but we're actually getting off of that today and going in a little bit of a different direction that kind of deals with wrestling with a sense of a call a little bit, because Joe was, as he just said, youth coordinator, youth director for a while, and now he's taking a different direction. So today, why don't you just back up and tell us what role you had in youth ministry, kind of how long you were in that, and now tell us what you're doing now, and then we'll get into some of your sense of a call and all that stuff as well.
Yeah. Well, I graduated college in 2009 and moved out to Houston to work at Christ the King. So my best friend, John Trapp, who I'd grown up with in Alabama, was there before me, and he recruited me to come be a summer intern. So that's where it started. I was just a summer intern, and I thought it was going to be brief. And then I stayed on for another year as like a year-long intern, and I loved it, and I was starting to find Houston to be a home, and I was loving the church and the ministry, and then they offered me to stay on as a coordinator. It's like a full-time job, and so I did that. I did all of that for a total of 4.5 years, and then John moved on to Austin to finish seminary, and then I was made the director, and I did that for about 2.5 years and worked with the staff at Christ the King and the students, and I really loved it. I spent 7 total years in youth ministry, and it was those are very formative years for me. You know, your first years right out of college, that's when, you're learning how to be a grown-up and how to handle life. And
first full-time job.
Yeah, and so much of it came with kind of going back and seeing life through the eyes of these middle schoolers and high schoolers who are also in very formative years and learning about their lives. And I almost felt like I got to walk through that with them. Actually, the really cool thing was that when I first got there, my first class of 6th graders were the ones that John kind of put me on and said, these are your guys. And I got to see them all the way till graduation, and I ended up leaving with them, which was really fun.
Yeah. And I was just curious, it's a fairly large youth group, right? Is Christ the King a fairly large church? About how many students were you over? And
somewhere around 100.
Okay.
Yes, yeah.
And then the staff that's under you?
So the staff, I had 3 staff members under me for most of the time that I was there.
Gotcha. Yeah, so that's some good experience for sure. And so as you're doing this, you said the total you were there about 7 years.
Mm-hmm.
So in that 7-year time period, when did you start to sense a call away from youth ministry? I know that most youth workers will wrestle with this at some point in their life, or are wrestling with it now. I've already been through it, so this could be helpful for other youth workers. So when did you kind of sense this call in another direction, and what is it? And you can kind of let that lead into what you're doing now, what you're planning on.
Yeah. Well, I ran across a quote, and I can't remember who said this, but the quote is, "Don't ask yourself what the world needs. Ask yourself what makes you come alive, because what the world needs most is people who have come alive." And that just stuck with me. And I remember this time, it was right around fall of 2014. That quote just kept running through my mind, and I kept thinking about my sense of calling and what God was really calling me to do with my life and what I enjoyed. And I kept finding myself being drawn to music, but not really knowing what that would look like. And then I got this idea to write an Easter album. and to write a bunch of songs that would tell the story of Easter. And I went to my pastor and talked to him about it and said, hey, is this something I could record like for the church? And he thought it was a great idea. So the church helped fund it, and I found a guy nearby who we had worked with before in the studio, and I went and worked and recorded the whole album from start to finish in a couple months. And that whole process like made me come alive more than any work I'd ever done. And that was like just an eye-opening experience for me to be like, wow, this is what I think I really want to be doing, because I absolutely love it.
Wow. And so when you were, I mean, you're talking about your love for music. When you were, youth coordinator and, youth director, were you leading music in the youth ministry as well?
Yeah, I was leading. When I started playing guitar and piano in high school, and I led worship at my church. Actually, we started like an early service, and I ended up leading worship there when I was 16, and I would lead worship at different college ministries that I was at. And when I first came to Christ the King, John, one of the tasks that I was given was to help build a worship team with the student ministry. And so I was helping to lead worship there. So it was just something I was consistently doing still. So I still had a reason to keep practicing guitar and piano, and it just stuck with me until I finally realized how much I enjoyed writing and producing and recording, that whole side of it.
Yeah, and I know that's something that's interesting about youth ministry, that oftentimes you do kind of wear a lot of different hats. And so you can kind of, I mean, I saw, various gifts and talents in my own life where I was able to kind of utilize those. I mean, there was a time back in college, and I can laugh at this now, where I thought about being I was a film major, and thought about directing movies. And so, I would always use iMovies and be able to make movies for our youth group. And, but I found that was very fulfilling. But but ultimately, that's not where I sensed, a call from the Lord. And so I guess kind of similar to you were able to kind of utilize those gifts of music, but then you sensed, hey, this is something that, like you said, I feel more alive doing this and want to pursue this. And so, anyway, that's helpful to think through. Is anyone who's wrestling with a sense of a call, should I stay in youth ministry or move on? Maybe if they're sensing some of these gifts aren't being utilized to the degree that they would, like to utilize them, and sense that, hey, this is where I feel the Lord's calling me. So,
yeah, definitely.
Good deal. Well, that's helpful, Joe. Appreciate it, man.
Yeah, absolutely.